sometimes it's better to just go in the wrong direction, but actually move and learn something along the way and realize which direction you should go.
Welcome to another Season 4 episode brought to you by Madrid Convention Bureau. This season was recorded during Convene 2024, and in this conversation, I speak with Laura Dekker, the youngest female to sail solo around the world. Laura shares her journey of resilience, explains the importance of staying calm under pressure, and reveals how she's teaching life skills and self-confidence to youth through her foundation. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Convene Podcast. I'm super stoked to be joined today by Laura Dekker, who is the youngest female to sail solo around the world. And I was reading, of course, through your bio and through your story, and I was impressed that you started this trip when you were only 14 years old.
Yep.
And you finished it in 2 years, correct?
Yeah, I sailed a bit more, and then so I started in Gibraltar on my own and then continued sailing around and came back to the Caribbean. So yeah, like altogether it took me about 2 years, but the actual sailing around the world from St. Martin to St. Martin was 1 year.
Yeah, wow. It's truly impressive. And since 2019, you have your own foundation.
Yeah.
And you work with children, teaching them how to sail and also what's team spirit and how to communicate properly, which I think are very fundamental skills, especially nowadays.
Yeah. So it's based on a sailboat because I think a sailboat is a really good platform to learn or teach a lot of things. But we're not a sailing school. We're really trying to open them up to themselves and to the world and to each other. So it's like an experience program, life skills.
So how do you think professionals can navigate and overcome struggles, even when they're so prepared? So where is this balance? Being very prepared for something, but still keeping a part flexible.
Okay.
For the unforeseen.
Okay, well, there's always going to be unforeseen. So when I was preparing for my trip around the world, one of the things my dad, from when I was very young, not necessarily for sailing around the world, but focused on, was that I would always think ahead of things that could go wrong. So, for example, if I was sailing into a harbor, he would say, well, what would you do if your engine cut off now? Or what would you do if that boat just suddenly made a strange maneuver? What would you do if this happened? What if you do that happens? And it really helps to think about solutions. And of course, it's never going to happen exactly the way you imagined it was going to go wrong anyway. But it helps to have thought about all those things, because then when something happens, something unforeseen happens, you will have thought at least about some parts of it. So probably the most important thing as a solo sailor is being able to stay in control of yourself. So don't panic. Keep control of your own emotions. Like, it's way more important than knowing how to sail, actually.
And how do you do that?
For me, it's practice. And you have to get to know yourself very well. I think, as with anything, if you really want to do something or you want to help others, or you want to, even as a mom or an event planner or running a business, you can't do that if you don't know yourself really well. So that's going to have to be the first step. You're going to have to be in control of your own emotions, of your own thoughts. And there are going to be moments where you don't. Like, it's not always possible, but I'm always striving to do that. And it's finding out little things or being aware of your own emotions and thinking, hey, well, what does this mean? And what should I do about this? And going back to things that happened and kind of analyzing. Of course, you can overanalyze. There's a balance. There's a balance everywhere. But that's definitely something I have done and still do a lot. I will think about things and how I would do them differently or how I would fix things and just make hypotheses for myself. And yeah, if things go wrong, I try not to jump on it straight away, but think for a second. So I give myself time to either count to 10, or if it's not very urgent, I'll just sit down, maybe listen to a song or just, do something to force my mind to think about it clearly instead of jumping to conclusions, because that can be very dangerous.
Yeah. How do you do that in a team? Because when you're solo, like you can allow yourself these few seconds, but sometimes in a team, you also feel the peer pressure, people looking at you for that decision to be made.
Yeah, I think it's still important to give yourself time to get a good answer, because what is more important, having an answer 1 minute faster that is maybe not satisfactory or doesn't, or sounds like rushed or isn't good, or just saying, hey, give me this 1 minute to process and then come with a good strategy or a good answer or something that is better. In my opinion, that would even be more professional, or people would respect that more because you're actually in control.
Yeah.
Giving yourself the time to be in control, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, being in control of your own emotions. So if you're not freaking out, chances are your team won't freak out.
And you might be freaking out inside, just pretend you're not.
And I think that's the mom talking right now.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I love that. And you had some barriers before starting the trip at 14. Yeah. So how did you first overcome that? And I guess that was also on your parents, but also how does that translate for event professionals or professionals in general? Because we always have these administrative barriers or social barriers that stop us from following our dreams.
I guess the hardest thing for me, so I had the government and childcare and judges and court cases, and it went absolutely berserk. And then of course I had the whole media who just fell on top of us and said, you can't do this, or you shouldn't do this, or this is insane, your parents are insane. And that was actually the hardest part for me, that they declared my parents as insane, which I love my parents. I have a really good relationship with them. I did also at the time. And then it's like, it's very strange because I'd never even thought about that people could see it that way, I guess, because for me it was so normal. I grew up sailing and I was just like, so, like, what's the big deal? I really didn't understand. I understand a bit better now. At the time, I just didn't see it coming. So, probably the hardest was first that they bashed my parents, and that, of course, raked a whole bunch of emotions. But also just people saying I couldn't do it and I shouldn't do it and it was crazy and I was going to die and I was going to sink and I don't know what. Eventually, I decided to not listen to any of that, which is really hard, but my thought process was that they didn't know me, and they didn't know how I'd grown up, what I had done to prepare for this. So I listened to people that know me very well and that know my process. And if they come back with feedback, I will sit and think about it. The people that actually knew me well, they all they didn't say like, oh, this is a great idea. But they were like, yeah, I actually do think you can do it. So that helped a lot to filter who says it and why they say it. Like, what is their motive for saying, no, you shouldn't do this, or this is a bad idea? Are they afraid themselves? Are they jealous? Are they just saying something because they just want to say something, which is very human?
Yeah.
So eventually I think I did that, but it's still hard. It's still hard to see all these comments coming in, or people just saying mean things to your face or discouraging it. Yeah, it will still mingle in your head, but eventually you're just going to have to say, it's my life. It's my thing. And I believe I can do it. And if there's a few people that you can trust, then that helps a lot.
Yeah. I don't know if you have faced that ever since, but how should we overcome government regulations and, people stopping you?
Well, that one is much harder.
I mean, I do agree. And I love the fact that you were like, I know my dream. I know I'm capable of doing it. So I'll listen to my internal voice and I'll do what I know I can do. In that moment, how did you process all these court decisions and the legal part of it? Because it's a tough one.
Yeah, it's crazy. No, so at the time, I didn't think about it too much. It was simply I have to do this and I have to get through this, because quite quickly when the court cases started, they actually took like the responsibility for my parents over me away. There was a stage where I wasn't even allowed to live with my parents anymore. So it wasn't a fight of whether I was allowed to sail around the world or not. It was a fight of if I could even live with my parents. So that was not a question to me. That was not something that I even considered letting go or not fighting for. So that fight was something I was just, I would go to the end. And my parents obviously as well. That really was no question about it. But I think if you go through things like that, it's always important to keep thinking why you're doing something. It's very, if you're fighting something or going something, it's very easy to become very absorbed in the goal. You start with motives and then you think I have to go there, and then you kind of get into tunnel vision where you're just and then everything just needs to, at least that's how I am. Like I have a goal and I'm just go for that. And I think people who have that can recognize it. And at that time, that's definitely what it was. Like, that's all I did. But since then, I've realized that it's important for me to sometimes stand still and go like, okay, wait, why was I doing this again? Because it sounds stupid, but we really do forget sometimes. We become so focused on the goal that we lose maybe originally good motives we had to start with are starting to fall away. So I try to keep my motives in check and kind of come back to that and go like, okay, am I still doing this for the right reasons and the right purpose? And
recommitting pretty much.
Probably. Yeah.
You've committed at the beginning, but just checking and making sure the commitment is still there. It's not an obsession. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
I definitely relate to that as well. Part of the program is focused on nature and your love for the sea.
Yeah.
And nature in general, and you're teaching the kids the same love and respect for the oceans.
Yeah.
What do you think we're missing here in the events industry? I mean, maybe you can give an example of how you're working with the boat, because it's, again, you have to prepare a lot of the stuff. Let's say it's packaged. So you have a planning process, which is probably a little bit similar to what we're doing for an event. So what's your thinking there?
At least with the boat, so we have our platform that is always the same platform, and we try to make the boat completely self-sufficient, which is very hard to do, but we're getting pretty close. So we have a lot of solar panels on the boat, which power most of the energy we need. We have a water maker on our boat, so we actually produce our own water, and obviously it's sail powered, so we really try to use the sails as much as possible, even if it means just floating around for a day or two. Then we're like, oh, now we're floating around. And I do think that's a part we're missing as humans in general, is that we have lost touch with nature, or we're seeing nature as something we have to survive. Like if there's rain or wind or a storm, or we'll just be mad, like, why is this destroying what we have built? But nature is very much a part of what we live in, and it does decide what is happening, because nature is so much stronger. So instead of continuously fighting it, I think we need to find more ways to somehow use it, or be more in touch and more appreciative of all the good things that nature is supplying as well. So if you're sailing, then you can say it really sucks that the wind is from the wrong direction, or there is no wind or a storm and you're being bashed for 2 days. But on the other hand, it's also powering us to go to all the places that we want to go. So that's one of the lessons I've learned at sea, to just stop fighting and actually appreciate and realize how small, I guess, we are in compared to nature. How much stronger it is, and that we're not going to overpower it, and that's okay.
I love this realization to just go with it.
And it makes it a lot easier for yourself if you think, okay, this is what it is, and we'll go with it, and we'll try to make the best out of it.
Just a different mindset. A word from our sponsor.
Voted the world's best meeting destination for 5 consecutive years, Madrid offers an exceptional transport network, breathtaking spaces, world-class dining and accommodations, and a vibrant lifestyle that seamlessly blends business with leisure. Make your next meeting Madrileño. Discover more with the Madrid Convention Bureau.
Now back to the program. What are some of the best takeaways from creating mentorship programs?
So something I see that all of the kids take away is just confidence. They all become more confident in themselves. And as for the rest, it varies a lot because the kids come on board for different reasons. So some of them come because they want to learn to sail better. Others come just simply for the adventure. Some are having a really hard time at home or in school and they just need to have a change of scenery. They all have very different motives. The confidence and just getting to know themselves. I think that's a big part. It's a big quest for teenagers anyway. I mean, I had that too when I sailed around the world. Why I wanted to do is I wanted to get to know myself and the world and people and like, how do I fit into all of that? And that's something, that teenagers work on, which is why they can seem very self-absorbed to adults. And we see that as a negative thing, but I don't think it is because that's simply their life phase that they're going through and they need to figure that out themselves. And yes, it involves a lot of being like thinking about themselves because that's what they're trying to figure out. So that is something that we focus on mostly. Just who are you? What do you want to do? Be you. And then communication and teamwork. So actually respecting each other, being kind, honest, humble. Those are things that are very important on a boat because if you can't be honest, if you can't trust each other, then you can't work as a team and then communications are useless. They don't say anything useful if you can't be open and honest. So yeah, those are definitely some of the core things we focus on.
Just want to make the connection with our industry because we're currently probably not seen as such a sexy industry for the younger generation that we desperately need. I think what you highlighted is if there's anything missing, that's what we need to just focus on, better communication and guiding people to get to know themselves and who they are.
Yeah, I think especially nowadays, it's really easy to lose yourself even more because there's that you're seeing online and it's like, well, I should be like this or I should be like that. Of course, when I was sailed around the world, I saw a lot of beautiful communities where I thought, oh, I wish I could, or I won't forget that, or I'll try to remember this and implement that. But it's so important to just stick with yourself and your own thoughts and remember that and not always try to follow. And I think communication is a really big thing that kids don't want to have one-on-one conversations anymore because just
that's interesting.
they prefer to just do everything on the phone. And I think calling is even only like WhatsApping or writing or I don't know, it's all Snapchat stuff. It's all new now. Like I feel like I'm so far behind already. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but because of that we lose communication skills, which we as humans are built to work together and communicate. And if we lose that, we're actually going to have a really big problem.
And do you allow internet on the boat?
No, we don't have internet on the boat. They're allowed to take their phones with them. I think it is a really big part of society nowadays, and taking it away altogether is just going to make them want it more.
Yeah.
But we do try to make them aware of the effects, and we have rules, of course, like no phones during dinner and social space to social space. And I do find it a struggle continuously because first, if we had no internet, then it was fine, and now they just download everything. So yeah, so I am actually starting to consider to make like no electronic days, so just certain days where everyone is just gonna put it in a box and actually talk to each other. Yeah.
And probably they were like, ooh, scary.
Yeah.
We have to communicate.
It's changing really fast. It's crazy. Like when we started the program, I've really still felt like, okay, the phones are going to used as a tool and they were able to put it away. Every year that just seems to be getting harder.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And a bit worrying.
And a whole different topic, of course.
Yeah, we have a lot of parents and people with children that they're dealing with this issue. So we can have a whole podcast episode on that.
Oh, yeah.
Sailing involves constant problem solving. And I think I asked you that too. But maybe can you share your top 3 lessons that event planners can adopt in their practice?
From sailing? Yeah, I guess one that pops into my mind is there was this stretch where I was sailing from Vanuatu to Australia. Or actually, it kind of started throughout the whole Pacific already. I loved going ashore so much and getting to know the local people and the communities that every time something small broke on my boat, I just kind of ignored it and was like, okay, well, it's still working, so I'll deal with it later. And then on the way to Australia, everything kind of fell apart. So my steering wheel like literally fell off. It just, and I had felt this little wobble in it for a long time already. It was like, it's just a little wobble, it's fine. But eventually the thing just broke and it just fell off. Steering wheel's kind of necessary. And my sails ripped, which I knew was going to happen because they were becoming brittle and I should have done something about it. So I guess the takeaway from that is if something small isn't completely right, don't ignore it and actually do something with it. That's not necessarily on a boat, but it can be with anything. Like if there's something inside yourself where you think, I'm not completely happy with that, just deal with it straight away because the problem is going to get bigger and bigger usually. Usually problems don't solve themselves. Yeah, really sad.
Yeah, and I think also in teams, when you see that there is a little something with a teammate.
Yeah, speak up straight away because it's gonna just get worse over time. Or yeah, definitely with people as well. If you feel like someone isn't really happy or there's something, and it's better to be open and get that out, even if that is uncomfortable right that moment. Yeah. But yeah, it's going to be so much worse if it goes on.
And anything else?
Let's see, what else? To not be afraid to make mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes on my trip, and it's because of those mistakes that I've learned now. And yeah, like that's the only way humans seem to learn really well is by just doing it wrong and then going, oh, this really doesn't work, even though your parents told you and their parents before them. Yeah. If you have kids, you recognize this too. And not be afraid to jump into the deep, I guess, because, I mean, it kind of follows along, don't be afraid to make mistakes, but because it's in the really hard times that you usually grow as a person the most. So I guess a good analogy would be if there is absolutely no wind and nothing is happening, it gets really comfortable and you just sit in the cockpit, you can read a book and you can do everything, but you're also not going anywhere. Like nothing is happening, not on a personal scale, you're not moving somewhere. So yeah, it can be comfortable, but it's not going to get you anywhere. Whereas when I'm in a storm, and it's super uncomfortable, and I'm salty, and I'm wet, and the boat's heeling over, and everything is flying everywhere. But those are definitely the moments where I am pushing myself, where I'm pushing my own boundaries, and it's super uncomfortable in that moment, and I really wish I wasn't in it. But then when I get out of that storm, I have moved really far, sometimes in the wrong direction. Doesn't matter. But it feels good to have overcome that challenge, and I have pushed a boundary and found a limit where I was like, okay, I know I can stay awake for 3 days, which is really cool. It's not something I would do very often, but it's nice to know or realize that a human body is capable of so much more than you originally think. That makes any sense?
Oh yeah, it does. I think all the event planners are feeling that during an event. Like 4 days, I think I just survived on adrenaline and loads of coffee. And
yeah, exactly.
And I like the fact that you said that after a storm, you can end up in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
But you can always course correct, right?
Exactly. You just course correct. Yeah. But at least like you've gone somewhere. And I think sometimes that is all that matters. Because if you stand still, you're definitely not going anywhere. And nothing is going to change. So sometimes it's better to just go in the wrong direction, but actually move and learn something along the way and realize which direction you should go.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've heard of that concept, Seth Godin. He speaks about the purple cow in the sense of organizations, people, doesn't matter. We all have a purple cow. So we have this one achievement that, really sets us apart. And then we always try to kind of recreate it.
Right.
Let's say if you're a writer, you write a book and it's a bestseller, and then the second book will never be the same.
It won't be the same.
Right?
Yeah.
So you have this one purple cow, and then you have to kind of try to find a way to disrupt yourself to find your second purple cow. And you've had this achievement at such a young age. So how did you kind of keep on pushing yourself other than, what the daily sailing brings
It's
you?
a good question. So when I finished my trip, I think a lot of people asked or even expected me to straight away do something else or want something else. They were like, well, you've done this. Like, what else could possibly top this? And I was like, well, why should I have to top it? It didn't even occur in my mind that I needed to do that somehow, or I never felt the need. To me, that journey was very much, it's like the building blocks that I needed to start my life. It wasn't, I was going to do that journey and then that was it or something. For me, it was like, well, that's when life starts. And I had so many goals and so many other things that I wanted to do. And I never felt like that needed to be something else, something crazy or something special, because life is not about proving to others how amazing you are or like, oh, I have done this. That's so cool. That's not what it's about. That's not what my journey was about. My journey was for me. I wanted to know myself. Like I said earlier, if you want to do anything useful in the world or help other people, you first need to know yourself. I think that's always been my mission and is still my mission. And the older I get, the more I want to actually step back, I think. And if I sail with the kids and with the teenagers, it's not about me. It's about them. So I'm not going to tell them what to do or how they should live their life or what my opinion is about them, because it doesn't matter. It's their life and they need to figure it out. So I'm just there to catch them when they fall, and if things go really wrong, to try to fix it. I don't feel like I need per se to have another purple cow in that sense. I'm not a seeker in that way. I want to make a change, and maybe throughout making that change there is another purple cow, but I'm not seeking it.
I like that. What's your opinion? Do you feel that we, as humanity, human beings, we just always try to grow, do more? Is that bringing us actually in the right direction always?
It doesn't necessarily bring us always in the right direction, but it does. I think that is human nature, and it's good, because otherwise we would just stand still and we would still be making fire with sticks and living in caves, right? Like, if we don't innovate, if we don't push ourselves, if we don't try, then we would get nowhere. So no, of course I don't think it's always the right direction, but on a personal scale, it isn't either. You push yourself and you do things, and sometimes you go the wrong way and you think, oh shoot, that was the wrong way. I just think it's important also as humans, as communities, to keep reevaluating. Why are we doing this? Are we doing this for the good purposes? Is that goal that we originally had, that we thought was going to make the world a better place, is it still like that? Are we still doing these things for the right reasons? I think those those things are important. Like I even feel in a way like there's this really big movement where we're all like, oh, sustainability and everything should be green and everything should be great and we should recycle everything. And it's great because I'm absolutely for that because there's obviously a problem. But I do start to feel like people are just getting sucked into this route without actually knowing like why or how or the details of it. It's just like, oh, sustainability. And it's important to think, okay, but why and how and actually reassess those things instead of just starting with a great idea and then losing track of what the point is over time.
And you mentioned innovation. Do you incorporate anything? I don't know if you can innovate a boat in that sense, but
yeah, I guess. I mean, we actually designed our own ship and wanted to have it built for the purpose of sailing with youth, but then that didn't happen mostly because of COVID and a lack of funds then. But then we just went into Plan B and bought an old boat and rebuild that one. I think. For me, the furthest innovation goes is not actually tangible things, but I guess more in a way of innovating new ways to teach and do things on board and be on board. I'm always learning. I'm always finding new ways, which of course is also innovation. But yeah, and not in the sense of actually tangible or not like that.
Yeah. Awesome. Was there anything we didn't mention we should mention before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. I think we've covered a lot of nice and deep topics.
Well, thank you so much for making the time and being on the podcast. It's a real pleasure. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you as well.
Remember to subscribe to the Convene Podcast on your favorite listening platform to stay updated with our latest episodes. We want to thank our sponsor, Madrid Convention Bureau. Learn more about how to make your next meeting madrileño at esmadrid.com/MCB. That is esmadrid.com/MCB. For further industry insights from the Convene team, head over to pcma.org/convene. Stay inspired, keep inspiring, and until next time.